merry, be bright, and make shopping all right with holiday gift cards from King's Restaurants. Give a gift they are sure to love. Delicious food and friendly fun at King's. Get a coupon for a free single crepe with every $20 gift card purchase. Extra holiday happiness from King's Restaurants. Be merry, be bright, and make shopping all right with holiday gift cards from Chuck E. Cheese's Guam, Ruby Tuesday, and King's Restaurants. Receive special offers with every purchase for extra holiday happiness. See stores for details and have fun this season from all of us at the GFS Group.
Whether you love history, nature, scenery, or good food, Jeff's Pirates Cove is the place to be. Originally established as Pirates Cove in 1953, it's the oldest remaining beach bar and restaurant in Guam. Located on Guam's rugged southeast coast, visitors for years have discovered the natural beauty wrapped in deep history. Come out and walk the entire 22-acre site. Stop by the Seaside Museum for a taste of local history and experience Jose's international menu with open-air dining. Stop by and see what you've been missing. Jeff's Pirates Cove in historic Ipan Talafofo.
Taking heat on the Hill, General Motors boss grilled by lawmakers about plans to close plants and slash jobs.
GM CEO Mary Barra met with Washington lawmakers Wednesday about why the company is cutting up to 14,000 jobs at North American plants. The company halting production on unpopular models to boost profits.
Strong General Motors is the best way for me to provide and maintain the 90,000 plus jobs that we have across the United States.
Lawmakers from states where plants are closing are asking the company to keep those plants open. Democratic Congressman Dutch Ruppersberger of Maryland's outraged since U.S. taxpayers bailed out GM during the Great Recession.
We committed to them, and now they're walking away.
President Trump's threatening to cut subsidies to GM. In Washington, Jill Nato, Fox News.
The state of Tennessee is preparing to execute a convicted killer Thursday. For the second time in just over a month, they'll use the electric chair to do it. David Earl Miller chose electrocution, believing it would be quicker and less painful than lethal injection. Miller was convicted of the beating death of a woman back in 1981. Another SpaceX launch on Wednesday, but this one did not go entirely as planned.
Ultimately, the SpaceX rocket launch from Cape Canaveral was successful. It delivered its automated cargo craft to orbit after takeoff.
3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition, liftoff.
But the first stage of the rocket, which is supposed to return to Earth for reuse, started spinning out of control. It was supposed to softly touch down at the Cape. It splashed down into the ocean, but SpaceX founder Elon Musk tweets it's undamaged and they will pick it up. In Miami, Eben Brown, Fox News.
Less than a week after a powerful earthquake crumpled an off-ramp, it's been repaired and placed back in service in Anchorage. The governor says crews started working on those repairs shortly after the earth stopped shaking. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
For over 30 years, Sanford Technology Group has been helping companies throughout Guam and Micronesia with their payroll, time and attendance, networking, and other information technology services. Our online integrated payroll and time and attendance solution provides the workforce management tools and expertise to make your business more efficient and employee-friendly. For more information, visit Sanford Technology at 335 South Marine Corps Drive or call us at 647-0220 to schedule a demo today.
Sanford Technology Group.
'Twas the night before Christmas, and all through the house, not a creature was stirring, not even a computer mouse. Looking at your checkbook filled you with dread. This year Christmas shopping will be harder, you said. Suddenly your heart rose as fast as it sank. You saw a My Christmas loan offer from your favorite bank. You visited a convenient bank office to apply and knew you could count on a speedy reply. And then you realized Christmas would be just terrific because of your My Christmas loan from Bank Pacific. Conditions apply. Equal housing lender. Merry Christmas from Bank Pacific.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Sanford Technology Group, STG, delivering service that can't be beat.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. How many times have you heard me say that, Real Joe Cruz?
Not enough, sir.
Not enough. It's a lesson that needs to be repeated time and time again, right?
I agree, sir.
Yeah, okay. Well, we do pay a certain amount of attention to constitutional rights here, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay. So here we are once again for another exciting adventure of Tall Tales. We've disposed of the Second Amendment portion of the program. I will turn next to Semi Caught Me, also known as Meet the Press. And this is that portion of the program where we compare the editorials of our two daily newspapers with a critical eye, looking for the one that is the most hard-hitting, edgy, topical, informative, pulling no punches, and so forth. And when we find that one, if I do find it, I use my blue pencil here to give that editorial the coveted blue star. And you'll be able to hear the champagne corks popping in the editorial boardroom of the winning newspaper as soon as I make that announcement. For the other one, sometimes they just get a pass. I've gone as far as giving Fs, F minuses, and zeros. So we're going to start out today with the Daily News editorial. And the Daily News editorial is precatory. I'm sorry, the Daily News, editorial is precatory. Precatory, a fancy word that indicates that you're hoping for something, or you're wishing for something, or you'd like to see something, right? It's a word that comes in handy when you're doing statutory construction. When you're talking about statutory language, get your Law and Order notebook out. There is mandatory language, permissive language, directory language, and precatory language. So here's the Daily News editorial. Our view: we hope Trump listens when Governor-elect Lou Leon Guerrero explains our issues. As you were on December 13, Governor-elect Lou Leon Guerrero will meet with President Donald Trump in the White House, a White House event for new governors, according to an announcement from her transition team. Would that be Sergeant Schultz that makes these announcements? I think so. Quote, I'm appreciative to President Trump for the invitation to newly elected governors, and I am looking forward to this first meeting with him and his administration, she stated in a news release. Guam is strategically important to the defense of the country and for the promotion of democracy, but there are pressing federal territorial issues I want to convey to him that affect our entire community. Going on, I am ready to work with the Trump administration, and I am hopeful now when she says they, is she referring to President Trump or the Trump administration? I just have a terrible case of pronouниtis here. I think maybe she's meaning, she might mean the Trump administration rather than the president. I am ready to work with the Trump administration, and I am hopeful they are willing to work with Guam to resolve these shared priorities. We hope, this is a Daily News now, she will be able to speak to the president about these issues, and we hope he will listen to her. Among the topics we'd like to see discussed: first, an adjustment in the federal Medicare and Medicaid reimbursement rates at Guam Memorial Hospital to reflect actual costs in the current millennium. Now, this is a matter that comes up from time to time, and I've heard people say that the reason that we don't get reimbursed actual costs is because we haven't kept up with the kind of paperwork that we need to get those reimbursements. But perhaps Lou Leon Guerrero, being a nurse, having been on the hospital board of trustees, and now being the governor and having a chance to chat up President Trump, perhaps she can solve this. Next item, reimbursement for the Earned Income Tax Credit Program. Now, I think there's a pretty good argument that no reimbursement is actually appropriate. Now, I know that's not going to sit very well out there with the folks in our international radio listening audience, but this is how the Earned Income Tax Credit works. People file their taxes, and they are entitled to deductions and credits. A deduction is something that you subtract from the amount of income that you receive, and then you apply the tax rate to the subtrahend of that transaction. A tax credit is applied to the actual taxes owed. So if you have a tax credit, you figure out what your tax, the actual amount of your tax is, and then you subtract the credit from the tax liability. All sounds pretty logical so far, right? Now, when you get into the Earned Income Tax Credit, you find something that doesn't make sense mathematically or linguistically, and that is that a tax credit can exceed the amount of taxes that the taxpayer actually owes. So the credit not only wipes out the tax liability, but goes beyond that and entitles the taxpayer to a check from the United States Treasury if he's a filer filing in any one of the states. If he's a filer filing here, then his check comes from the Guam Treasury. So in the U.S., the money to pay the Earned Income Tax Credit comes from general taxes, from the income tax itself. We talk in terms of federal federal mandates, unreimbursed federal mandates, as though the national government is requiring us to pay this Earned Income Tax Credit without supplying us with the revenue necessary to pay the tax credit. Well, that isn't strictly true, because the mirror image of the federal income tax is applicable here. So we have the same source of income to pay our Earned Income Tax Credit as the United States government has to pay its Earned Income Tax Credit. I know that's not going to sit very well, especially with that guy who sits over there in that lazy boy, and I refer to as the smart money. Oh, that's an unfunded federal mandate. The Fed should be paying that for us. Well, logically, I don't know that that's as sound an argument as it might be. I've heard people say that the Earned Income Tax Credit in the United States is paid for money collected pursuant to FICA, Federal Income Contributions Act, what you pay for Social Security. I've done a fair amount of research, and I can't find that. I can't find anything that would lead me to believe that the money to pay Earned Income Tax Credit comes from anywhere except income tax. So if that's the case, that lets a little bit of air out of our Earned Income Tax Credit. Now, this is a little bit complicated, so if it's too complicated, just post a note on Facebook here and say, stop it. But I don't think that the Earned Income Tax Credit should actually apply here if it results in a check to the taxpayer greater than the amount of taxes that he paid in. And the reason I say that is because the Organic Act said that the income tax laws in force in the United States are likewise in force here. Well, when you start talking about giving people an ex gratia payment, that means a gift, that's no longer a tax. That's something more along the lines of a social welfare program. And I think you could look at the mirror image in such a way as to say, well, yeah, the rest of the tax structure applies here, but the mirror image doesn't make the earned income tax credit applicable here. We went through some of this in the judiciary, and we didn't come out so well, so I guess we might be stuck with it. Then there's an interesting historical footnote, and that's this, that when the earned income tax credit first kicked in back in 75, 76 during the Carter administration, we actually got a check from the feds to reimburse us for the earned income tax credit. And I don't hear anybody talking about that, but that actually happened. But in any case, it doesn't hurt for Lulian Guerrero to raise that matter with President Trump if she has his ear. The next item on the list is full Social Security programs on Guam, including supplemental security income. Well, we do have full Social Security programs here on Guam. Anybody that works, except certain GovGuam employees, pays a FICA tax, the Social Security tax. If you're self-employed, you pay self-employment taxes. And when you reach a certain age, as low as 62, if you file the right papers, you'll get a check back from the Treasury, the U.S. Treasury. And there are some certain provisions for survivors and disability and other things like that. If you live here, you're entitled to the whole panoply of Social Security benefits. Now, the word social supplemental security income is mentioned in the same sentence. And this is a tricky one because supplemental security income is not, I'm going to repeat, not a part of the Social Security program. It is a social welfare program that pays money to people who have certain kinds of disabilities. And it doesn't apply here. But it's not part of Social Security. For administrative convenience, it's administered by the Social Security Administration, but it's not Social Security. The argument against Guam receiving supplemental security income is that, well, you know, you guys out there don't pay anything into the federal treasury, so you can't expect to get all of the federal benefits that the people in the 50 states get because all of the people in the 50 states contribute to the federal treasury. Once again, it's logical, but the hooker here, though, is that the people in the CNMI who meet the eligibility requirements are entitled to social supplemental security income, SSI as it's called. Now, that guy over there in the lazy boy is saying, that ain't fair. It's not equality. Well, it's true. But regular listeners to Tall Tales know that when it comes to unincorporated territories, there's nothing in the Constitution or any place else that requires the national government to treat every territory the same. I've probably talked about that on several different occasions. But once again, the best argument is, well, our neighbors to the north get it. We have people that could certainly use it. How about letting us have it, President Trump? And the next one is full voting rights and representation for U.S. citizens residing on Guam. I certainly hope that Governor Lulian Guerrero does not ask for this, because anybody who listens to Tall Tales knows that this is a stupid thing to ask for, and it's a stupid thing for the Daily News to put in their wish list. This is the kind of thing that can cause an apparently well-written editorial to not get the blue star. We've been through, we talk about this all the time, and the way that people in the United States get to vote is they live in a state, one of the 50 states. Political rights in the United States are matters of state citizenship. Civil rights are primarily a matter of national citizenship. So there's no way that people living on Guam are going to be able to have representation in Congress, nor cast votes that result in the election of a president, you know, the electoral college and all that sort of thing, because we don't have any electors. And the only way to get from where we are to where the Daily News thinks we should be is to amend the United States Constitution. How likely do you think it is that that anybody in Congress would propose an amendment to allow people, 160,000 people living on an island 3,800 miles from the nearest other U.S. landfall, to be able to vote for president and have representation in Congress? I don't think so. It's just unrealistic. And anyone who comes forward thinking that this is something that the president can do, even by using his bully pulpit, is going to be shooting, I would say in the case of Lilian Guerrero, shooting herself in the foot. But I know that that's not the correct way to say it. I have to say they would be shooting themselves in the foot, if I'm going to be politically correct here. So this is not a good idea. And then finally, better coordination between the military and the people of Guam as the military buildup goes forward, including preservation of cultural and historical sites. Now, the president is the commander-in-chief of the U.S. Armed Forces. And then compact impact reimbursement. It would seem to me that logically our best argument is for compact impact reimbursement, because what we have here is the American welfare system basically here on Guam, and we have open borders, things that conservatives rant and rail against all the time. Anybody coming from any one of the freely associated states can come here, just a one-way ticket, and you're here, and you don't have to be here too long, and you begin to start plugging into our social welfare system. We pick up all of the costs for what amounts to an American foreign policy decision. The American foreign policy decision basically is one of denial. The United States doesn't want anybody else to have too much influence in those three freely associated states. So the United States cut a deal with them saying, we'll send you some money. We'll give you other things, like we'll let you use the United States postal system. You'll be eligible for certain federal grants, just like one of the 50 states. And in addition to that, your folks, your young people can enlist in the American Armed Forces, which is a biggie, by the way. And in addition to all of that, we're also going to let you come to the United States without documentation. And what's the closest part of the United States to the freely associated states, to most of the people in the FAS? It's right here on Guam. So good diplomacy, United States, good foreign policy decisions. But when we come to the nasty question that I'm so prompt to ask in the case of any government program, we're not getting the right answer. And the question is, okay, fine, who's going to pay for it? And the answer to that question is that we get to pay for it. So in a sense, we're paying for the United States foreign policy initiative. That to me is the best argument that we have on this list of things that we would hope that Lou asks the Donald. And of course the worst one is this full voting rights and representation for U.S. citizens residing on Guam. So that's the Daily News editorial. Going to the Post. Speeding, driving while drunk or high puts innocent lives at risk. This is one of those, wow, I never realized that before. We support the Guam Police Department's plan to step in enforcement of traffic rules and laws to keep dangerous drivers from causing harm to themselves and others. GPD will be conducting GUI checkpoints during the season of holiday festivities. So be careful. Simple infractions such as a busted light or an expired license tag have led to searches that resulted in the discovery of crystal methamphetamine. So the teachable moment here is that if you're going to carry crystal methamphetamine in your car, make sure you take it to a mechanic before you start, and make sure that your lights are all working properly, that your license tags are up to date, etc. Try to avoid the risk of having a police officer pull you over and discover that methamphetamine. Here's a tall tales teaching point. Don't carry any drugs in your car. Yeah, I don't know. That probably would never fly. It's just too simple. The hoped-for outcome when police bust people selling hard drugs or under the influence of drugs would be to keep them from ruining other people's lives and causing accidents that could be serious or even fatal. We also hope that getting arrested would be enough of a wake-up call to get on a path to recovery. This holiday season, let's not break the hearts of our families by landing in jail for being drunk or under the influence of drugs. I'm gonna do that. I'm not going to break my family's hearts by landing in jail for being drunk or under the influence. I can promise you that. I'm just not going to do it. It's time to get sober, to get help, sober up, and enjoy the holiday season with a company of good friends and positive influences that raise one up. I guess what they're talking about there is listen to tall tales every day. Yeah. Speeding, too, must be called out. Wherever we're headed on Guam, the distance isn't that far. We need to respect speed limits, including driving no more than 15 miles per hour near a school and not faster than 35 miles per hour elsewhere. This one's a little bit harder. Yeah. Okay, let's support here's the call to action. Let's support the Drive Sober or Get Pulled Over campaign this month. So I'm for that. So Real Joe is playing Take 5. After Take 5, I will make the decision as to where the coveted blue star goes, and then we'll pick up the card.
I'm John Gibson. This is My Word. This is the story of a heroic sergeant from the most harrowing days of the Korean War. It was at a place called Outpost Vegas, called that because it was a huge gamble to take it and hold it. It was March of 1953, and over 500 artillery and mortar shells were pouring into the outpost every minute. The Marines holding the position were barely hanging on, and the sight of one of their comrades trudging through the smoke and the shell fire to bring more ammunition to the front rallied their spirits. Their fellow Marine was brave and tireless, eventually hauling 9,000 pounds of ammunition to the front, each one of 51 round trips through the sound and the fury of enemy shelling. They came to call their brave comrade Sergeant Reckless for her stamina and courage and pure determination to do her duty. Yes, I did say her. Sergeant Reckless was a horse, a special horse who hauled ammo to the sound of the guns and wounded Marines to the medics. How did Sergeant Reckless become a Marine? An officer bought her from a Korean family who needed the money. She was bred to race, but went to work in battle and became so beloved by the Marines. After the war, she was brought to Camp Pendleton to live out her retirement A statue of Sergeant Reckless stands at Camp Pendleton to this day. I'm John Gibson. That's my word.
Be merry, be bright, and make shopping all right with holiday gift cards from Ruby Tuesday. Buy a $25 or $50 gift card for those on your shopping list. Get a $15 bonus coupon with every $50 card purchase. Some extra holiday happiness from Ruby Tuesday. Be merry, be bright, and make shopping all right with holiday gift cards from Chuck E. Cheese's Guam. Get a free medium pizza with every $25 gift card purchase and a free extra large pizza with every $50 gift card purchase. Some extra holiday happiness from Chuck E. Cheese's Guam.
Welcome back to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, Guam's single voice of reason. Call now, 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
Well, you heard the analysis of the two editorials, so I think I'm ready to make the decision. Daily News gets it, even though they blew it badly on that item about voting rights and representation. Precatory indeed, something we wish that we had, but something that the president isn't going to be able to give us. Daryl chimes in kind of along the same line. Daryl, as you were, I misidentified the gentleman. He is Tahero Taggarty. You remember that we have a new tool that we use, that we reference here on Tall Tales, Tahero Taggarty. After Daryl told us about how a legislature is supposed to operate. And Daryl tells us that SSI, Congress can extend to Guam as it did CNMI. So it's an issue for Mike SN to advance, not Lou or MZB after Mike is sworn in. True enough. It's very true. It is a matter that has to come from Congress. Now, in our system, you know, we have separation of powers. We have an executive branch, a legislative branch, and a judicial branch, but there is some overlap. The president does have some legislative power. He vetoes bills, which is part of the legislative process. And he also has the ability to send a note to the presiding officers of each of the houses of Congress saying, could you enact this particular legislation? President also is in charge of submitting the budget to Congress, and a lot of stuff can go into the budget. So it is Congress that has the ability to extend SSI to Guam. Having the president on our side in that particular matter certainly would help. But you're right, Tejero, it is a matter for Congress. The Tejero also points out that he has some special insight here on GMH. GMH fees set by legislature are calculated in a way that defies logic. Includes markup for admin, spoilage, plus highest cost shipping, and factors in non-payment by uninsured and insurance. Does not discount for bloated staffing and ordering inefficiencies or recoveries through tax garnishments. When pricing placed on rational basis, federal and insurance payments will be closer to actual cost, and admin inefficiencies will be exposed. That sounds interesting, Daryl. And I have one here from one that just popped up here. Joe Camacho, I heard RevTax is holding up a small business license renewal for $162 owed. The last I heard, MidPac is still operating under a valid business license while owing the government of Guam $14 million. And then Joe Camacho says, oh, the irony. an interesting observation. So that's what the comments that I have here on Facebook that are relating to what we discussed here during Zemi Ekotny. I'm going to go next to the card, and I've got some holdovers on the card. I've got Chamorro Independence versus Lulian Guerrero, governor-elect. I've got Christmas versus political correctness. I've got the United States versus CLTC. I've got Fernandez versus WANPAT. Matson versus APL, and that Matson versus APL gets into what Steve Dominic Zanini raised. He would like to see the Jones Act on Madeline's list. So we can talk about that in this item on the card called Matson versus APL. And then I've got, a little social commentary. One of the things that we do here on Tall Tales is social commentary, usually in the context of constitutional government or government in the context of social commentary. And then I've got John Dingell versus the Senate, Nikki Haley versus Trump, and lawyers versus the Constitution. And then, of course, in deference to the real Joe Cruz, I've got Chamorro versus Chamorro. So, starting out with Chamorro Independence versus Lulian Guerrero. This is from a KOAM news story on the 4th of December. The Commission on Decolonization is another government entity preparing for the transition to a new administration. The incoming governor will be able to select new appointees, but the representatives for the three political status options, statehood, independence, and free association, will remain. They sought to ensure continuity for a planned decolonization conference next year and voted Dr. Michael Bavacqua to chair the committee that's preparing for it. Now, this isn't the clearest story that you'd ever read, but dissecting it, what it's saying is this, that when the Leon Guerrero administration is sworn in, they can appoint new people to the Commission on Decolonization, which I think is more properly referred to as the Commission on Chamorro Independence, because that's about the only thing that they ever devote themselves to. So she gets to appoint new members, but the commission has taken the position that there are only three potential political statuses for the territory of Guam, those three being statehood, independence, and free association. And I've pointed out on more than one occasion that free association is legally not a possibility, and that the statehood is practically not a possibility. So that leaves only one thing on the list, independence. And I've also pointed out that when somebody else tells you what you got to put on your list for political self-determination, how much self-determination is that when someone else dictates to you what your options are? Not much. So we've talked about that before. But anyhow, apparently there is going to be a decolonization conference next year. We're not told when or where or why or how or what. I don't know if this is another trip to New York to address the Fourth Committee or what it's all about. But we do know this, that the commission voted for Dr. Michael Bavacqua to chair the committee that's preparing for this jaunt to the conference. And, of course, Michael Bavacqua is the prime mover for an independent Guam, a Guam that would be sovereign and independent of the United States, which is basically all this commission ever talks about. So the reason I put it on the card is this: Chamorro independence versus the Leon Guerrero administration. Will the new Leon Guerrero administration use that commission to work on decolonization, or will it continue in its current form of as what I denominate the Chamorro Independence Commission? And when we're talking decolonization, we start out with the proposition that Guam is a colony of the United States. Okay. And there is a movement that says that Guam should be decolonized. It should no longer be a colony. I don't necessarily go along with that. I've spoken on more than one occasion that Guam is part of the American empire. It has been part of the American empire for over 100 years. It's worked out pretty well for the folks who lived here. And as I see it, until someone can convince me that their independence is more than just an empty word, I think that our stars lead us to stay as part of the American empire, and we might want to spend our time improving our position within that American empire instead of going off on the wild goose chase of independence. But that's where that commission is heading, towards independence. So if we are in a colony, that means that everybody who lives here is living in a colony. I am living in a colony. I've lived here, lived in a colony for over 50 years, and I plan to continue living. In fact, I plan on being buried in a colony. Let's not do it too quickly. But that's my plan, because I really want to live here. I don't want to live anywhere else. But that's what decolonization means. It's not the purview of, a small but very vocal group led by Michael Bavacqua, and that's where we are right now. So is Lou Leon Guerrero as the new governor? Will she allow that commission to continue on as the Chamorro Independence Commission? Or will she recast it as a real decolonization commission? That's the reason that this item is on the card. I'd be interested in, as you are all well aware, if you want to communicate with our international radio listening audience, all you got to do is dial 888-8255, 888-TALK, and we'll put you on the air, and you can opine on the subjects we're talking about, or perhaps you could even change the subject if you do it gracefully. And as I've mentioned before, you can always call up and tell me that I don't know what I'm talking about. You might even be right sometimes. It's happened before. If you're a Facebooker, you can always log into Facebook Facebook Live, and you can not only listen to Tall Tales, you can actually see the host of Tall Tales as he jabbers at the microphone. Lo adainai sa gostat pagos he no host. So be careful when you look at that screen. And screen shows a terrible picture of me. You want to know why it's terrible, Real Joe Cruz?
Why, sir?
Because it looks just like me. It's awful.
I thought you were going to blame me, but I would have took the rap for that, sir.
Well, I appreciate it. You're always willing to step in and help. I know that. Okay, so much for the Commission on Chamorro Independence. Moving along to the next item here is Christmas versus political correctness. And this goes to a song. The song is "Baby, It's Cold Outside." Now, I would get close to the microphone here and sing the song, Baby, It's Cold Outside. However, if I did, you wouldn't have any better idea how it sounds than if I don't sing it. I can't carry a tune in a bushel basket. But it's an old sound. It's been around for a long time. I'll read some of the lyrics. It's a guy and a girl in the movie. It's a 1949 movie called Neptune's Daughter. And I saw it in 1949 when it first came out. No horses, no cowboys, no soldiers. It wasn't exactly my kind of movie, but back in those days, you went to the movies every Friday night, whether you wanted to or, whether you liked the movie or not.
How much was the movie, Bob?
9 cents.
9 cents.
9 cents.
Wow.
If you were under 12, 9 cents.
Amazing.
It was. It really was. Yeah. 9 cents. So I saw this movie, and the duet here, it's a duet, Baby, It's Cold Outside. It's kind of like in church, where there's a phrase and then a response. And the two singers are Ricardo Montalban and Esther Williams. Ricardo Montalban was big before we could even spell diversity. A great actor. And here's how it goes. The lady starts out, Esther Williams starts out, I really can't stay. And then Montalban comes back, Baby, it's cold outside. I've got to go away. Baby, it's cold outside. This evening has been hoping that you'd drop in. So very nice. I'll hold your hands. They're just like ice. It's too bad you and I didn't do this one, Real Show Crew. You could be Esther Williams.
Thanks, Bob.
My mother will start to worry, she says, and then he comes back, beautiful, what's your hurry? Father will be pacing the floor. Listen to the fireplace roar, and so on, until finally at the very end, there's bound to be talk tomorrow, she says. He says, think of my lifelong sorrow. At least there will be plenty implied. He says, if you caught pneumonia and died, I really can't stay. Get over that holdout. And then they sing together, ah, but it's cold outside. So I'm going to come back and wrap this up before that big halftime show that we have every day at 5. And then we'll move on to the U.S. versus the CLTC, Fernandez versus Wanpat, and Matson versus the APL.
Chili's 3 for Me menu just got bigger. We're giving you more choices for the same great price. For just $15, you can get a beverage, salad, and an entree. First, choose from a refreshing Coca-Cola, iced tea, or Heineken on draft. Then enjoy a house salad and select your choice of a mouth-watering entree, like our half-rack ribs, Cajun chicken pasta, old-timer burger, personal chicken fajitas, or the flavorful margarita flatbread. So hurry in today and enjoy our Chili's 3 for Me menu for just $15. Available for a limited time. Chili's, more life happens here.
Attention federal employees and annuitants. Open enrollment begins on November 12th through December 10th for federal employees' health insurance plans, with rates 19% lower than last year for Take Care's non-postal high option and access to PICA's Best Clinic FHP Health Center. Take Care's supplemental wellness package provides cash incentives and allows members access to 19 fitness partners, including the largest fully functioning fitness center in Hagåtña and Dededo. To learn more, call Take Care at 646-6956. Take Care. Our island, your health plan.
So this story comes from a radio station called Cleveland Star 102. And here's what the guy who runs Star 102 says. He says, we used to play the song, Baby, It's Cold Outside, but you're the Christmas executive officer at Star 102. You're meaning you out there in their local radio listening audience. And you told us it's no longer appropriate. That's what he says. I got to be honest. I didn't understand why the lyrics were so bad until I read them. And then there's the lyrics here some of which I read. And then he goes on to say, now I realize that when the song was written in 1944, it was a different time. But now while I'm reading it, it seems very manipulative and wrong. Gosh, maybe I shouldn't have read it on the air, huh? It seems very manipulative and wrong. The world we live in is extra sensitive now, and people get easily offended. Well, that's true in spades. And by the way, for you social justice warriors out there, did you post the sign on your mirror this morning that says, don't forget to be angry about something today? The world we live in is extra sensitive now, and people get easily offended. But in a world where Me Too has finally given women the voice they deserve, the song has no place. That's the world we live in. Now, you turn on the radio, would this play, would this go over on a lot of the radio? No, it wouldn't, because it's not racy enough. You know, it's not rap. I mean, some of the stuff that comes out of radios nowadays, or movies or TV shows, if you had tried those kinds of things in 1944, when this song was written, they would have not only not been played, they would have nailed the door to the movie theater shut.
That's true, Bob, but that song is one of the most remade songs by artists over the last, 30, 40 years.
And why would that be, Real Joe Cruz?
It's got a good sound to it.
Because it's a good song.
It's a good song, and I think those people are thinking that it sounds like she's getting taken advantage of.
Well, I suppose you could read it that way, but again, compare it to the filth that passes without objection and has for the last 20 years, and compare it to this. What you have here, at worst, is a little bit of sophisticated double entendre, right? It's not, well, just let me try the handcuffs on for size, baby.
You're right. Yeah. It's a very innocent and sweet song.
It is. So if we're at a point now where something like this, as the guy goes on to say, seems very manipulative and wrong. The world we live in is extra sensitive now, and people get easily offended. What's left? I mean, this will be the death of the performing arts. Think of some of the dances you can see on TV. Think of the way, anyhow. I still like the song, and if I can, I'm going to play it as much as I can this Christmas season. And we have our Facebook Live problems here, so we can't play copyrighted music as part of Tall Tales. But if we could, I might substitute the theme from Peter Gunn for the Second Amendment portion of the show and play this instead. But political correctness, whatever happened to freedom of speech? I don't remember. I think this guy's name is Glenn Anderson. And if I were to meet Glenn Anderson, I would ask them, aren't you kind of using your powers here to, in a manner that you're basically censoring that which is passed without objection for over 70 years? I wonder what they would say if I were to pose that question to them. So that's a CLTC. I'm sorry, that's political correctness versus Christmas. I saw online that there are some people who are objecting to Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer also. That's probably that, animals now are, maybe Tom Poole will call us and tell us about the appropriate manner in which to treat reindeers who have uncharacteristic reddish proboscises. Okay, then this is an old item from the card. Fernandez versus Juan Pat. I understand they're working towards a resolution where Fernandez is occupying a part of Building E for his special education group, but Juan Pat wants it for her charter school. And I had this mental image of something that looked like the border between Tijuana and San Diego. It's my bad. I'm just over imagining things here, I guess. But the latest news report I heard on this was that they were probably going to work it out, and it's not going to be necessary to call in the National Guard. So I'd like to find a little good news every once in a while. Next on the card is the United States versus the Chamorro Land Trust Commission, and I've talked about this before. And this argument that the government of Guam is now making that the Chamorro Land Trust Commission is not a Chamorro-only type undertaking, and for that reason, quote, racist. Now, the word racist is always one that's a little bit difficult to bounce around, but it would mean in this particular context that people who are identified as belonging to a racial group called Chamorro are the only ones eligible for Chamorro Land Trust leases. And I'll come back to this after that big halftime show that we're going to be starting here right now.
Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Texas Respect. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. Into the wee hours, a steady stream of mourners still filing through St. Martin's Episcopal Church in Houston, where former President George H.W. Bush lies in repose.
This wasn't just the Bush family church. This was his neighborhood. President George H.W. Bush's home, just a stone's throw away in a city that he so loved, where thousands are expected to come throughout the night to pay their respects as the former president lies in repose here at St. Martin's Episcopal Church before a private funeral service and later a train ride aboard 4141, the president's personal Air Force One locomotive, to College Station, Texas, at Mr. Bush's final resting place.
Fox's Jeff Manasso in Houston. On Wednesday, Washington mourned.
George Herbert Walker Bush was America's last great soldier statesman, a 20th century founding father.
Presidential historian John Meacham among the eulogists, as was former Canadian Prime Minister Brian Mulroney and the president's son, George W. Bush. Then the former naval aviator took one final flight on the plane that was his Air Force One returning to Texas. 5 U.S. Marine aviators are missing off the coast of Japan after a mid-air collision. Fox's Jill Nato live in Washington with details.
An FA-18 fighter jet with 2 crew members and a Marine KC-130 refueling plane with 5 on board collided midair, then crashed into the Pacific. Rescuers found one of the crew members in stable condition and brought them to a hospital. No details provided on the second crew member recovered, but 5 are still missing. The Marine Corps says the crash had training. The planes launched from their base near Hiroshima. Jack?
Thanks, Jill. Signs of potential turmoil in the markets Thursday. Dow futures are down more than 330 points. Asian stocks down sharply. This is Fox News.
Be merry, be bright, and make shopping all right with holiday gift cards from King's Restaurants. Give a gift they are sure to love. Delicious food and friendly fun at King's. Get a coupon for a free single crepe with every $20 gift card purchase. Extra holiday happiness from King's Restaurants. Be merry, be bright, and make shopping all right with holiday gift cards from Chuck E. Cheese's Guam, Ruby Tuesday, and King's Restaurants. Receive special offers with every purchase for extra holiday happiness. See stores for details and have fun this season from all of us at the GFS Group.
Whether you love history, nature, scenery, or good food, Jeff's Pirates Cove is the place to be. Originally established as Pirates Cove in 1953, it's the oldest remaining beach bar and restaurant in Guam. Located on Guam's rugged southeast coast, visitors for years have discovered the natural beauty wrapped in deep history. Come out and walk the entire 22-acre site. Stop by the Seaside Museum for a taste of local history and experience Jose's international menu with open-air dining. Stop by and see what you've been missing. Jeff's Pirates Cove in historic Ipan Talafofo.
The Trump administration will hold a roundtable discussion Thursday with top executives from the tech industry.
Top executives from Microsoft, Oracle, and IBM will be among the tech CEOs who will attend the event at the White House, which will focus on, among other things, emerging technologies such as artificial intelligence and 5G wireless communications. In recent months, President Trump has been critical of several internet companies, including Google, Amazon, and Twitter, accusing them of everything from tax avoidance to liberal bias, claiming today's largest social media platforms are systematically silencing conservative voices on the internet. For their part, tech CEOs have been vocal critics of President Trump's policies, from tariffs to immigration. At the White House, John Decker, Fox News.
A Honduran woman who was part of the caravan of Central American migrants gave birth on U.S. soil shortly after entering the country illegally last week, according to the U.S. Border Patrol, who says they arrested the woman just north of Tijuana. She gave birth while she was in custody. The family, including her husband and another child, have been released pending the outcomes of their immigration hearings. A new report showing global terrorism deaths are down.
Research group the Institute for Economics and Peace saying deaths attributed to terrorism are down 27% in its latest annual report. The third straight year the number has fallen, although it still counts 19,000 fatalities. The research is explaining the drop by pointing to military defeats for groups like ISIS and Boko Haram, plus counter-terror measures. One increase in the report, far-right attacks are up. In London, Simon Owen, Fox News.
Police say a large truck in Illinois has collided with a school bus carrying members of a high school basketball team. Local media reports say several people have been taken to the hospital after that crash on I-74 near Downs in central Illinois. Their conditions not known yet. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
The season of giving is here, and the stations of Choice Broadcasting want to give back. 93.3 The Point, Boss 104, Star 101, and Lux Guam present Charity of Choice. Each of our radio personalities have chosen a Guam charity that they would like to benefit.
And I chose Habitat for Humanity. Tune in daily to see how you can help.
Charity of Choice 2018 is brought to you by Choice Broadcasting Company, Lux Guam, American Water Tech, and the station that gives from the heart, 93.3 The Point.
Be merry, be bright, and make shopping all right with holiday gift cards from Ruby Tuesday. Buy a $25 or $50 gift card for those on your shopping list. Get a $15 bonus coupon with every $50 card purchase. Some extra holiday happiness from Ruby Tuesday. Be merry, be bright, and make shopping all right with holiday gift cards from Chuck E. Cheese's Guam. Get a free medium pizza with every $25 gift card purchase and a free extra large pizza with every $50 gift card purchase. Some extra holiday happiness from Chuck E. Cheese's Guam.
Jeff's Pirates Cove, open daily at 8 a.m., serving up hot breakfast with endless coffee and a taste of history.
So a little bit more Baby It's Cold Outside here. I got some interesting comments on Facebook. Jose Martinez says, well, there goes White Christmas. And Jose also says, what about, quote, I saw Mommy kissing Santa Claus? Until one gets to the end, it's pretty traumatizing for a kid. What's my mommy doing with that strange man? Nate Horn says, we'll need to ban I Shot the Sheriff, Every Breath You Take, and lots of others. And then Jose Martinez comes back and says, he sees you when you're sleeping. He knows when you're awake. Need I say more? And then Brad Hewitt, maybe they can skip over baby like contemporary stations skip over a word that begins with B and like a word that begins with O, especially in what is called urban audiences. That might fix it. Daryl Taggarty submits Live and Let Die. And then Jose Martinez comes back with another old favorite, Folks Dressed Up Like Eskimos. Yeah, I remember that one. What song is that? I can't remember the title of it, but the line, Folks Dressed Up Like Eskimos. And Jose says, that's just culturally insensitive. Jose says it's culturally insensitive. And besides that, it's cultural appropriation. I don't know if you've been following that along, but, you know, if you are not of Mexican ancestry, if you don't have some Mexican ancestry, you got no business cooking tacos at all, because that's cultural appropriation. So that's certainly the case with folks dressed up like Eskimos. And then Brad Hewitt says, guess Merry Christmas from the family is insensitive also. So, you know, during the break, I had a chance to think about this a little bit, and I'm wondering if we couldn't save Baby It's Cold Outside, just simply making one simple change, because as it is, Baby It's Cold Outside, obviously baby is the term of endearment that Ricardo Montalban is using as he refers to Esther Williams in the movie, right? Baby. So what if we just changed it, instead of saying Baby It's Cold Outside, how about Buddy It's Cold Outside? Wouldn't that do it? I really can't say, Buddy, it's cold outside. I got to go away. Buddy, it's cold outside. That would seem to be more in tune with the times and perhaps not quite so objectionable. You wouldn't think that the Me Too movement could object to it. Political correctness. Okay, back to U.S. versus CLTC. The government of Guam now is trying to maintain this posture. I think it's a fictional posture that the Chamorro Land Trust Act was not something designed to benefit only those of the Chamorro ancestry. They made up a fiction that it had to do with post-World War II land takings, which just isn't correct. You read the statute, you read the history of the act, it just isn't there. If you understand what the act is attempting to do, the champions of the Chamorro Land Trust Act will tell anybody that the reason that we want a Chamorro Land Trust Act is that we want those leaseholds to remain in Chamorro hands no matter what happens to the island, no matter who's in charge or whatever happens, that there will always be some land on Guam that's owned by Chamorros. And those who are proponents of the Chamorro Land Trust Act would tell you that in a heartbeat. Now, there's this idea, well, yeah, but it's really just a political going along recognizing a category the United States created by passing the Organic Act in 1950 and bringing the native inhabitants of Guam within the ambit of American citizenship. Now, I remember reading that of all those people, about 125 of them weren't of Chamorro ancestry. Now, I know a couple of them. In fact, there was a funeral for someone who was born on Guam, was not Chamorro, just today. And my wife's grandmother fit into that category. She was 100% Filipina. She was not Chamorro. She was born here in 1880. Two Filipino parents, etc., became a citizen when the Organic Act passed, etc. So there's perhaps a small footnote there, but that's not the reason that the act was passed. The act was passed for Chamorros. And I mentioned this before, but I went and dug it out again. The government of Guam opposed a lawsuit filed by Angel Santos back in the late 80s, where Angel filed for a writ of mandate to force the government of Guam to implement the Chamorro Land Trust Act, which had been dormant since its passage in 1975. The government of Guam opposed it, and I have, it's easy to find the memorandum that the government of Guam submitted in opposition to that petition for writ of mandate. Here's a key part of it. The Chamorro Land Trust Act discriminates on the basis of race and national origin. Only those people who are native Chamorros are entitled to receive the benefits of the act. Clearly, this creates a class of preferred citizens based upon race and national origin. Guam is a multiracial community, and many of its non-Chamorro citizens would be excluded from the benefits of the act. Now, this is what the government of Guam filed in the Superior Court in that particular case. Now the government of Guam is trying to leave that behind and make basically the opposite argument. Good luck. Okay, next we have Matson versus APL. So we have two shipping companies serving Guam now, Matson and APL, which used to be called American President Lines. Like so many other things, they shortened it to APL. I suppose I should start calling the program TT instead of Tall Tales. It goes like this. Ocean carrier APL on Thursday responded to the lawsuit Matson filed Wednesday to challenge APL's, quote, subsidized shipping services to Guam and Saipan. We remain confident that Matson's, this is what APL is saying, we remain confident that Matson's challenge to our MSP participation is completely lacking in merit, APL stated. MSP stands for Maritime Security Program, and as an MSP participant, APL receives a federal subsidy for shipping goods to the Marianas. Now, I bet you didn't know that there was a shipping company here that receives a federal subsidy for shipping goods to the Marianas. Matson previously challenged the U.S. Maritime Administration's decision allowing APL to serve Guam and Saipan. The U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit held that the action must be brought in the district court. Matson filed its lawsuit in the district court, U.S. District Court, District of Columbia, arguing that it's unfair for APL to compete with Matson and the Marianas. Well, that's an interesting statement, that it's unfair for APL to compete with Matson. Matson, of course, has a de facto monopoly. Nobody else is carrying cargo between the United States mainland and Guam, except for Matson. That's the so-called Jones Act. All coastwise shipping is regulated by the Jones Act, with a couple of exceptions like Puerto Rico and the Northern Marianas. But I'll get to that in a minute. Between the fall of 2016 and the fall of 2017, the same time frame in which APL Saipan was approved for inclusion in the Maritime Security Program, the volume of containers Matson carried in the Guam Saipan service declined by 23%, Matson contends in its lawsuit. APL stated the service of its ships, called APL Guam and APL Saipan, makes it easy to remember, is approved by MARAD, the Maritime, it's an administrative agency, MARAD, and the Department of Defense. APL remains committed to serving the people of Guam and Saipan and the U.S. military personnel stationed there, as it has for the past 3 years, by maintaining a modern, efficient service to Guam and Saipan, ensuring that shippers have a competitive choice directly benefiting the U.S. military and the people of Guam and Saipan, APL stated. So this Jones Act thing is somewhat complicated, and I can't tell you that I completely understand it, but the so-called Jones Act, I think its proper name is something like the Shipping Act of 1920, in the beginning required that all coastwise shipping in the United States be on ships built in the United States, owned by Americans, and crewed by Americans, and registered in the United States. So if you wanted to carry cargo, for instance, from New Orleans to Miami, it would have to be on an American ship. You couldn't use a Mexican ship or a Nicaraguan ship or something like that, because that would be coastwise shipping. Likewise, if you wanted to ship something from New York to San Francisco through the Panama Canal, Jones Act would apply. And it, of course, applies on Guam. Now, not all of it applies. For instance, as I understand it, the requirement for an American crew doesn't apply on ships that engaged in coastwise shipping to Guam. It has to be an American ship, registered in the United States, owned by Americans, but it doesn't have to be crewed by completely crewed by Americans. And I also understand that the real hang-up here is not so much Guam, but Honolulu, because the way the Act works, it makes it very unprofitable or very difficult financially for an American shipping company to build bigger ships to sail the Honolulu-Guam route, because the ships have to be built in the United States. And guess what? It costs a lot more to build a ship in the United States than it does to build one anywhere else. So no new ships have been built for the mainland Honolulu route, and it's those ships that continue on from Honolulu to Guam. Probably aren't very many ships that would sail from L.A. straight to Guam. So that's one of the complexities involved. Another complexity involved is that ships that leave Guam aren't going to be carrying any freight out of here. We don't export anything except maybe empty containers.
Do they ship cars out of here sometimes, right? Or
yeah, you know, household goods and stuff like that, right? But compared to what we bring in,
yeah,
you know, we don't grow anything, we don't mine anything, we don't manufacture anything, so there isn't much outbound cargo. So a lot of people are saying we should just get rid of the Jones Act and let everybody serve, you know, the mainland U.S. Guam route. Well, if that were the case, how many foreign shipping companies would jump at the chance to get into a market this small? This is, once again, it's where we are and how many of us there are. There are only 160,000 folks here. So my sense is that there wouldn't be a lot of foreign shipping companies competing to serve Guam. There would be some service, but it wouldn't be regular like Matson is, and it might not be very dependable. It would depend on a lot of factors a lot of market factors that could really work against us. So I wouldn't want to pull the plug on the Jones Act until, if it were me, until I knew a lot more about it. Now, I think it's helpful that APL is in here with this maritime security program. Backing up a minute, the object behind the Jones Act when it was first enacted was that as a matter of national defense, it was thought necessary for the United States to have a good-sized merchant fleet, because we are a two-coast country, and the United States, even in 1920, was a champion and participant of international trade. Well, you're not going to do much international trade if you don't have ships. You're going to be using somebody else's ships instead of your own. So the idea was that we would give American ships the monopoly on coastwise shipping, and that way we would always be assured of having a viable American maritime force. And that extended out to Guam and Virgin Islands. That was the thinking behind it. It really hasn't worked very well. And because it didn't work very well, that's why we have the maritime, what's it called here? The Maritime Security Program, where the United States actually will make deals with shipping companies. If you have X number of ships ready to, on a moment's notice, get engaged in our defense shipping, we'll give you Y amount of money. That's how it works. So, being one who is a firm believer that competition brings out the best in everybody, I see the entry into APL, into Guam competition, as a positive sign. And of course, Matson is crying crocodile tears here. They would like to devour APL because APL is cutting into some of their business, and it's just not fair because they get that subsidy. Well, here's Matson, which is a de facto monopoly created by, in a sense, by American laws that limit the shipping only to coastwise shipping only to American ships, complaining about APL. So, as of now, I'm going to rule in favor. You got your gavel handy? I'm ruling in favor of APL. I'm glad they're here, and I would hope that competition might result in lower prices for all of us. With respect to the larger question dealing with Guam, the Jones Act, the Maritime Security Program, international shipping, etc., I'm hopeful that the new administration would sign somebody up who really understands the intricacies of ocean freight and help the new administration fashion the kind of policy that would help us deal with these things in a manner that's best for all of us. So that's Matson versus APL. And let's see what's next on my card here. Next is kind of a long one here. It's called Freedom versus Equality. And this comes from a piece that I found in the American Thinker this morning. And before I jump into it, I'm going to read something from Pacific Island Times, written by an ace journalist, someone that really has done a really good job. And that would be Marvik Kagarangan. And Marvik, writing about the current you know, the election results where we now have 10 females in the legislature, female lieutenant, female governor, etc. This and this kind of is what I tried to say the other day, but kind of like Daryl Taggarty and his Tihannis Taggarty, he was able to put that so clearly and so briefly. I'm going to give that same prize here to Marvick. Marvick says that, quote, breaking the glass ceiling is a cliche that is as obsolete as the Bureau of Women's Affairs, which has outlived its mission. The early waves of true feminism have since opened up economic and political opportunities for everyone, for every gender to tap. Remember that being openly gay did not bar public auditor and former Speaker Benjamin Cruz and Lieutenant Governor-elect Josh Tenorio from getting elected. The politically victorious female politicians got elected into office not because they were women, but because Guam voters presumably judged them on their credentials and believed that they are the right people for the jobs they sought. And I couldn't agree more, Marvick, and that's kind of what I said the day after the election when there was so much oohing and eyeing about women taking over the legislature and the governor's office. So the title of this article that I list on the card as Equality versus the West from the American Thinker is, for the West to live, equality must die. And we'll come back to that after the seventh inning stretch. Well, I thought maybe you'd start without me there, real Joe Cruz.
I couldn't start without you, sir.
Oh, thank you. Well, anyhow, let's assume that we're at the center field bleachers at Wrigley Field, and we just heard that, the crack of the bat and that ball bounced off the center field wall. And we're up on the bleachers at Wrigley Field, and you're doing your Yogi Berra imitation. And somebody says, hey, Yogi, you got enough money to buy me a bag of peanuts?
Well, a nickel ain't worth a dime anymore.
A nickel ain't worth a dime anymore, according to Yogi. Okay. So going back into equality versus the West, or freedom versus equality. And when I'm finished with this, you'll understand why I'm saying that freedom and equality are at odds with one another. The more equality you have, the less freedom, and vice versa. So the title, "The West, for the West to live, equality must die." The West means, Europe, North America, etc., the so-called Occident, as opposed to other parts of the world. And here's how it goes. Equality is the chief faux virtue of our time. Equality is the chief false virtue of our time. Our obsession with it brings to mind the great G.K. Chesterton's observation: the business of progressives is to go on making mistakes. The business of conservatives is to prevent mistakes from being corrected. Long ago, the West erred by exalting, quote, equality at ultimately quality's and sanity's expense. In fact, it's at a point where boys claiming girlhood are allowed in girls' bathrooms and locker areas based on the equality dogma. How do we correct this mistake? First, stop being conservative and realize that few people have pondered equality deeply, and that of those who have, few actually believe in it. Let's start with what most already reject: seeking equality of outcome. We so often hear, for example, that growing income disparities must be eliminated. Not only does this imply big government redistributionism, but does inequality actually tell us anything relevant? Imagine two tennis centers training children. After a given period, all the kids at the first are advanced beginners. At the second, there are some advanced beginners, a large group comprising varied intermediaries, a decent-sized set of advanced players, and a few approaching tournament caliber. Which center exhibits more equality? It would be the one where everybody at the end of the period is an advanced beginner without any evaluation. Now, let's see, this absolutely reflects the, quote, income gap's reality. The rich are getting richer, but so are most others. As even the left-wing group called Think Progress reported in 2013, the current standard of living worldwide is history's highest. The worldwide standard of living is higher now than it has ever been in the history of the world. Thank the spread of market economy and a meritocratic system. Examining our diversity obsession, is there one endeavor that equal group representation would improve? Would the NBA, NFL, Major League Baseball, or National Hockey League be better being 50% female and reflecting the wider population, racial, ethnic decomposition, then Jews are less than 1% of the world's population, but constitute 20% of its Nobel laureates. That's quite a figure. And most great scientists are men. Would intellectual endeavors be improved by enforcing proportional group representation? But you come back to this rejoinder, but we must have equality under the law. The conservative will say, really? Because we don't have it and never have had it. Most obviously, minors aren't afforded adult rights and privileges, with even smart 15-year-olds disallowed from driving, voting, entering into contracts, joining the military, etc. Then only men must register for selective service. If there's a major war, only men will have to make the ultimate sacrifice. This is easily remedied? That's not the point. Many of us understand why the sexes have always been and should be treated differently by government, though men deserve benefits too, but that's another topic. So in reality, do we really believe in true equality, quote, under the law? This is related to equality of opportunity. This is related to the above, and we already know how minors don't have equal opportunity. But what of women? If in the military, should they be allowed the role including frontline combat and submarine service? For insight, ponder the pregnancy rate aboard Navy vessels, often dubbed, quote, love boats. Then there's how females are sometimes allowed entry into male sports. Ex-golfer Annika Sorenstam receiving a sponsor's exemption, that is, she didn't earn her spot, to play in the 2003 Colonial PGA tournament is an example. Yet that this is considered fair, even though males traditionally aren't allowed in female athletics. We're going to put transgender issue aside here. Not only violates the equal opportunity pseudo principle, but reflects a tacit acknowledgement of inequality. To wit, boys and men are better at sports. Boy, I expected, a lightning strike at any minute here, uttering this heresy. Boys and men are better at sports. Ergo, this new chivalry double standard. Unequal opportunities legitimacy becomes clearer when further considering the private social sphere and its social laws and economic imperatives. Would it be odd if men didn't have equal opportunities to become daycare workers? What if West Indian, Japanese, and German restaurants only wanted, respectively, black, Asian, and white employees because they lend business buttressing authenticity? There's also how bars only hire male bouncers and countless other examples. Yet the equality lie is best illustrated by its proponents. Considered, despite sanctimonious talk about glass ceilings, and this is why I read Marvick's article, despite sanctimonious talk about glass ceilings, disadvantaged females within the feminist grievance narrative, there is no whining about women being excluded from working-class, male-dominated professions. American thinkers Katie L. Dewani wrote last month, there is more than plenty of talk about the dearth of women in science, in engineering, in upper management positions, and as CEOs. But there is no one asking, where are all the female garbage collectors? and the female elevator technicians, the female landscape laborers, the female oil rig workers. Where's the equality there? That their rarity approaches unicorn status is why men constitute 92% of workplace deaths, because most of the dangerous jobs, like the ones I mentioned, go to men. Another unequal outcome seldom addressed. There's also the intersex wage gap controversy, which persists despite conclusive evidence that women earn less because of their different career choices, not discrimination. Nonetheless, while we hear incessant complaints about women's lower pay in sports, acting, or elsewhere, a market forces-driven phenomenon, there's nary a word regarding how female fashion models greatly out-earn their male counterparts. That's the reason that I decided I'd go into talk radio instead of being a male model. Probably could have been pretty successful at both, don't you think?
Yes,
Rosie?
sir. Well, you are tall.
Yeah, okay. Okay, the lady concludes, all of this reveals that feminist clamoring for, quote, equal representation is not about equality at all. It's about power and prestige. In truth, equality today has about the same kind of meaning that, quote, peace, freedom, and strength did in Orwell's 1984 dystopia. It's ploy, not principle, self-righteously deployed as a rallying cry to gain advantage and further a politically correct brand of inequality. Equality dogma has also invited statist hell. For if all groups are equal in worldly capacities, as the dogma holds, then intergroup performance differences must be the result of discrimination. If everybody has the same capabilities, then different outcomes could only happen because of invidious discrimination. That's what she's saying. This justifies social engineering as a remedy. Ergo, quotas, affirmative action, set-asides, and disparate impact rulings that destroy relevant merit-based standards. Yet it gets worse. One reason equality-based groups, the, quote, reign of terror French revolutionaries and mass murdering Marxists, have bled the ground red is simple. Equality is unnatural. Does it exist in nature? Some species are more dominant within the same environment or survive more readily within a given one. Within the same species, some members are larger, hardier, stronger, or faster. Moreover, hierarchies reign. Examples: one lion rules the pride, and one silverback gorilla the troop. And chickens really do have a pecking order. Is man this rule's one exception? In reality, human conception involves essentially an infinite number of possible combinations. Individual talents and gifts vary, and even groups have characteristic strengths and weaknesses. Thus, equality-obsessed movements are contrary to nature. They fight and must try to defeat it. Imagine the intrusive, perverted control required to vainly try to achieve equality in a lion pride or a gorilla troop. In man's civilization, such schemes beget bizarre social engineering, meritocracy's destruction, suppression of the successful, oppression, and when applied zealously enough, the Khmer Rouge killing fields. Well, I'm going to come back to this coming down the home stretch, and I got a phone call. Carlito. I thought maybe it would be Jimmy.
I don't know. Maybe Jimmy's busy today.
Yeah, I'm still waiting for Jimmy's friend to come on the line.
Be merry, be bright, and make shopping all right with holiday gift cards from King's Restaurants. Give a gift they are sure to love. Delicious food and friendly fun at King's. Get a coupon for a free single crate with every $20 gift card purchase. Extra holiday happiness from King's Restaurants. Be merry, be bright, and make shopping all right with holiday gift cards from Chuck E. Cheese's Guam, Ruby Tuesday, and King's Restaurants. Receive special offers with every purchase for extra holiday happiness. See stores for details and have fun this season from all of us at the GFS Group.
Here at APL, our core values give the company its heart and soul. Whether it's connecting your business with our global network through our newly enhanced service or investing our efforts into giving back to the community, APL is committed to serving you. We humbly honor the opportunity to find innovative solutions for you and your business. To learn more about our enhanced service, call 588-4651 or visit www.apl.com/Guam for more details.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Sanford Technology Group, STG, delivering service that can't be beat.
So before we entered the home stretch here, went through the list of possibilities that this devotion to equality can result in, and the extreme case would be the Khmer Rouge killing fields. And going on, yet seeing no option. People can't imagine shedding the equality dogma, saying without equality as a guide, how is unjust discrimination avoidable? First, note that this occurs in equality's name, too, like quotas. But this gets at why equality is a faux virtue. We've forgotten the real ones. Virtues are morality's elements defined long ago. Examples are charity, honesty, diligence, courage, humility, and temperance. Equality tells us nothing relevant about, let's say, why blacks, but not women, should be on Navy submarines or illegal alien caravans should be denied entry. Equality dogma per se is insufficient for drawing distinctions, but the virtues, in particular justice and prudence in the latter case, and those two along with chastity in the former, do thus help inform. Of course, all the virtues must be accepted and applied because they balance each other out. To cement the point, consider equality arguments' fruits, boys and girls' bathrooms, women and formerly men's institutions like VMI, and men and women's sports, be transgenders, the sexual devolutionary agenda in schools, LGBTQ rights, and drag queen story hour, claims that Muslim immigrants can't be denied entry, the 1965 Immigration Act born demographic upheaval, same-sex, quote, marriage, the Boy Scouts becoming gender-neutral scouts, coercing businessmen into serving homosexual events, satanic Christmas displays, and countless other trespasses. In Sweden, as an example, a multiple sclerosis patient was even denied possibly restorative drug treatment that he was willing to finance himself because it would violate the equal access to medicine principle. None of these outrages would or could occur in a virtue-oriented civilization, just as accepting scientific principles renders impossible pseudoscience such as alchemy, trephination, and bloodletting. Knowing and accepting moral principles render impossible a pseudo-morality called political correctness and its manifestations. There's a reason equality was never defined a virtue. A modern mistake. Its emphasis was born of the so-called Enlightenment, thus named, mind you, by those within the movement, that is, people fancying themselves more enlightened than everyone else. Does that remind you of anybody else?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. The radical leftist French revolutionaries had their cry. The radical French revolutionaries had their cry. Liberté, equalité, stupidité. Otherwise, that's a paraphrase. Our founding fathers also emphasized equality. Of course, they recoil at its current perverse manifestations. Yet they nonetheless erred, a result of a very human overreaction to European classism. Far better and truer than all men are created equal would be all men are created sacred. Well, that's a good sentence. In other words, each one of us is an individual, and as such is entitled to certain deference from every other individual. Then subsequently, the 19th century socialists picked up and ran with the equality ball, and the rest is dark history. Exalting equality is another example of conservatives conserving yesterday's liberalism, playing the caboose to their engine of entropic end times change. But what was once progressives' mistake is now ours, and if the West is survive, we must stop preventing that mistake from being corrected. So what do you think, Carlito?
Hey, Bob, good afternoon.
Yeah.
I just wanted to chime in on something that Thomas Sowell commented about, that some of us have an advantage right from the start, and that's birth order. People that, extensive studies have shown that people that are born first tend to have a higher IQ and tend to perform better in school and do better, have more success in life. And he said this is because they have the full attention of the parents, and this has an effect on them. The only group that outperforms the firstborn is the only child, and for the same reason. They have the parents' full devotion and full attention. So, birth order is something none of us have any influence over. That's not our fault, but it does give us a proven advantage based on extensive studies.
Here's another one, Carl. The month that you were in which you were born, they did a study of professional hockey players in Canada, and the vast majority of them were born in January and February. Very few of them born at the end of the year, because when they were very small children, they were enrolled in various hockey classes, and the more mature ones tended to do better than the less mature ones. So if we're talking about the fifth year of your life, if you're born near the end of the year, you're not going to be as mature as someone born in January. Yeah. I was a victim of that myself, being born at almost Christmas time, and some of the kids in my class born January or February were, it took me a long time to catch up with them, not to mention the fact that they were tooling around in cars when I was still riding a bicycle. Just wasn't fair.
Yeah.
Maybe
it also brought up that people also enjoy certain advantages because of where they're born. There are geographic advantages in certain areas. For example, people born in areas around mountains, on the flatlands, tend to be, in cities and more developed areas. people that are born, regardless of color or ethnicity, born in the mountains tend to be more isolated, have less exposure to other cultures and, other more modern ideas and developments. So they tend to be more backward.
Makes sense. Less communication, right?
Yeah, exactly. As well as, people in the islands. They tend to be more separated and not exposed to new ideas and new cultures, new methods. So they tend to be more isolated and less developed.
So do you concur, Carlito, that what we need to do is stop worshiping on the false altar of equality as imposed by the government?
Yeah, it's an illusion. I mean, there's so many examples of how it's virtually impossible to reach pure equality for everyone. There's just too many ways that life throws at us that makes it impossible to be equal across the board. It's impossible.
Okay, well, thanks for calling, Carl, and we'll probably be talking to you tomorrow.
Okay, Bob. I'll talk to you later.